Buenas, happening to Good morning, It's nice to see everyone here today. It's nice to see some of you that were here yesterday and some new faces that are joining us for the first time today. If you're joining us for the first time, Wahusi Melvin Wampat Borja, the Executive Director of the Commission on Decolonization, and welcome to the Fanhita 2025 Conference. For those of you that attended with us yesterday, I'm happy to see you back, and I hope that you enjoyed the conversations yesterday. Today we have a great lineup for you, and we're excited to just get right into it. But before we do, I want to just acknowledge some of our guests. Of course, Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes has been a long-time advocate for Chamorro self-determination and decolonization. Former Speaker Judy Wampat is here. Former Senator Teddy Marsh Taitaman. Our board member, Dr. Kenneth Gofigan Kuper, and Natasha Sula, as well as Dean Selman from the University UOG class. Thank you all for being here. I also want to acknowledge that we have Kumishon Ifinot Somoto in the house. Almost the whole crew is here, and I'm really encouraged to have you folks here. Thank you for being here with us today. If you guys had not, if you didn't realize, if you went to the Ballroom C session, 2 board members from Kumishon were, 2 out of the 3 panelists were Kumishon board members. So I'm really happy to have our Sina here and participating and helping us to guide this conversation. I'd also like to acknowledge Senator Teresa Lahi, who just joined us. Happy Senator. Thank you for being here again. Senator's here for the second day. I was joking with Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes out in the foyer that's how I gauge our senators, is who shows up to these conferences, and do they only show up for when I call them in the opening remarks, or are they here for discussion? That's how I know. And thank you both for being here and participating in these discussions. It's really important that our leadership is involved, and that it's great that this is a place that our community can connect with our leaders specifically on these issues. So today we have a great keynote speaker lined up for you and some excellent discussions. And I look forward to what we're going to accomplish today. It'll be the last day of the conference. For those of you just joining us, some basic housekeeping. Restrooms are out the door and to the right. Breakout sessions will be next door in Ballroom C, right outside to the left. And then there are 2 more breakout sessions upstairs on the 2nd floor. We will be announcing where each session is assigned to later in the afternoon. Lunch today will be around noon and served in the foyer. You have programs on your tables. If you are here for the first time today, you should have received a conference bag. And if you did not, please see myself or one of my staff. This is Harmony and Byron in the back here, and we'll be happy to help you. If you were here day 1, you can only have another bag if we have extra. Just kidding. Just come and talk to us and we'll help you out. By the way, if anyone in here, we had a couple requests from different audience members who are interested in getting extra educational materials to share with their families, or some of you are teachers. If you fit into that description and you'd like more information that you can share, please let us know. We just did another run, and this is what the material's for, is to be distributed. So thank you for your interest. Okay, everybody feeling good today? You guys feeling good? I gotta say, guys, this is the first conference that I've really been able to had the pleasure of enjoying. We've done a lot of conferences in the past, and they were all excellent. I had a good time, but they were all very stressful. And I feel like I don't always get a chance to absorb what's happening. But yesterday, I try to be deliberate about being present and not thinking about what's the next thing to do. And I want to just thank my team for being awesome and holding us together and making sure. Guys, I have to share that Nolan Flores and Natasha Suba used to work at our office, and the 2 of them have been torturing themselves, still working right on the ground with us. I think they like us. I do. Thank you guys. I just want to acknowledge you publicly and let you know that I appreciate it. So thanks to everyone who has helped put this on. It's really, truly a community effort. Okay, enough of that. Let me introduce our keynote for this morning. Today's keynote address will be delivered by Dr. Kenneth Gofigan Kuper. Kenneth Gofigan Kuper is an associate professor of political science, Tamoru studies, and Micronesian studies at the University of Guam's Micronesia Area Research Center, where he runs the International Relations Research Agenda. He is also director of the Pacific Center of Island Security, a Guam-based think tank dedicated to analyzing geopolitical maneuvering in the Pacific Islands. He is the chairperson for the Free Association for Guam Task Force under the Guam Commission on Decolonization. So he's definitely the guy that you want to talk to if you want to get involved in advocating for Free Association for Guam. I'm really excited that Dr. Kenneth Kuper is here to speak to us today. He's a close personal friend of mine and an excellent ally and advocate. And we're excited to hear from him today. By the way, you notice on the program he will be participating in a breakout session later today with Dr. Carlisle Corbin, which is going to be fantastic. So please help me in welcoming Dr. Kenneth Gofigan Kuper.
Buenas. Afade. So afade toro hamsu and sijus masinu if not the mizu poku. Kof maguvzu na gagizu gwini para bekwentusi hamsu puri belinia. Esti ihinago para tafan edza gini mundo. Za para tana lat megut, za tana lat fit me I manera ni tafanogi como Guam gimet ni mundo. Para guahu magahir hafa iliknya si magalai hura. Man magotnya hit kita hasu. Lo mega kita hita I tautoguahan kalanti mamalili na taiti ini na senyata. So, buenas everybody again. I'm very pleased to be here to speak with you about the value of this goal, not just to learn from the world, but to strengthen the way in which we stand as Guam before the world. I want to talk with us through three things. First, how Guam is seen and often misunderstood in the world. Second, how we can act through external engagement, even under colonial constraint. And third, how we prepare through training, coordination, and strategy for the future that we want. Overall, I argue that we should institutionalize and create a para-diplomatic strategy now because it builds capacity, visibility, and preparation for future sovereignty. In this vein, I'm reminded of Magalai Hural's words, "We are stronger than we think." For many of us, we believe that there are severe limitations to our capacities, limitations to our brilliance, to our innovation. Yet I want to remind us all here today, man met gotnya hit kita hasu. We are stronger than we think. That's why I want us to take a moment to reflect on the language we're using today, starting with the word we. We are here at Fanhita. We are stronger than we think. But the deeper question is, who is the we? Let's talk about it. Because understanding who we mean when we say we is at the heart of how Guam shows up in the world. In Keynote Tamoru, there is little ambiguity in this. Our language distinguishes between we inclusive and we exclusive. We let the person we're talking to know if we are including them or not. Fanhita, manmatgotnya hit kita hasu. These are all inclusive. The alternative would be fanhami, manmatgotnya hamki and hasu. But we do not often think about this inclusion or exclusion in English. To state it simply, the we in English is a bit ambiguous. I argue that this ambiguity seeps into Guam's presence in the world. We are a strategically located, unincorporated territory with a significant U.S. military presence. We are the homeland of the Tamoru people. We are where America's day begins. we are a Pacific island. Yet when Guam speaks, whose voice is being heard? Who is the we behind Guam's voice? I really began to think about this in 2017. My partner and I traveled to Aotearoa, New Zealand for a conference. And during one of the lighter days of the conference, we decided to drive down to Auckland and spontaneously take a 40-minute boat ride to a place called Waiheke Island. It's like a 35 square mile island with about 7,000 people. After a long day of visiting their vineyards, we stopped for lunch at a fish and chips place near the ocean. In a polite small talk, the hostess asked my partner and I where we're from. We said Guam. She looked confused, had no idea where Guam was at the time. She then turned to the cook behind her and asked if he knew where Guam was. Amid the tantalizing smell of frying fish, he looked over at us and said, "Hey, that's that giant military base, nah?" This would happen again in 2023. I was in Osaka, Japan doing a presentation about the geopolitics surrounding Guam. When I was done, a woman from the country of Malta came up to me and said something that I will never forget. She said, "Thank you for your presentation. I didn't know that anybody actually lived in Guam permanently." These moments forced me to confront an uncomfortable truth, that for many in the world, Guam is either unknown or known only through the lens of the U.S. military. It was odd thinking that my island home, where I was born, where I had my first kiss, where I witnessed the birth of my children, where I learned to be who I am today, is either internationally unknown or simply known for war. It was sad thinking that the Guam that many in the world think of is not the Guam that I know and love. For them, the voice of Guam is one removed from its people. For some, there were no people in Guam to even have a voice. We have never had the chance to shape our own international image. For too long, others have spoken for us, reducing us to a location, a base, a footnote. But our story, the real story of Guam, has yet to fully unfurl before the world. As an unincorporated territory of the United States, Guam does not have the formal power to control its foreign affairs. This power obviously belongs to the federal government, who also controls the foreign policy of the states. So naturally, our perception in the world is disproportionately affected by what the U.S. does in Guam. For example, there was in Ronald Stade's dissertation, he interviews this Air Force officer, captain, who said about the island, quote, "People on Guam seem to forget that they are a possession and not an equal partner. If California says that they want to do this, it is like my wife saying that she wants to move here or there. I'll have to respect her wish, or at least discuss it with her. If Guam says they want to do this or that, it is as if this cup here," he pointed at a coffee mug, "expresses a wish. The answer will be, you belong to me, and I can do with you as best I please," end quote. This is a large part of being a territory, one where your voice is either absent or not respected. Not only are we an unincorporated territory, but we are also an island. The world thinks of us as small, isolated, US-based island with nice beaches. This is not unique to Guam. The world thinks this largely about islands in general. I want you to think of the word island and then close your eyes for a few seconds. Go. Okay, now you can open. What were three words that automatically came to mind? For some of us, it may have been home. But I bet some of you may have thought small, isolated, or paradise. And if you did, you're in good company, because much of the world thinks this about islands as well. Islanders are consistently reminded of our smallness and distance. People look at maps of the Pacific and see tiny dots scattered in an ocean of blue. They see islands as specks of land destined to be dependent on the larger land masses around them. They see islands as places to project power onto, not places whose people can project power on their own. They see islands as over there, disconnected from the rest of the world. Yet these isolated and small landmasses are also places where one experiments with little political resistance or headache. Scholars call this the laboratory rationale for studying the islands. Islands are places where great powers experiment scientifically, politically, environmentally, socially. The Pacific Islands were home to nuclear testing sites for the US, France, and the United Kingdom, chemical weapons storage at atolls like Kalama, also known as Johnston. The region is home to political status experiments such as US incorporated territories, French overseas collectivities, British overseas territories, and herein lies the island paradox. For larger powers, we are important because we are unimportant. The fact that we are small and isolated to them means that larger powers feel they can do what they want to us with the expectation that we will simply suffer what we must. Our importance for them lies in our disposability, sized, and perceived isolation. Yet in Guam, we know that we are not isolated. We know that we are not disconnected. There have been times in our lives when we have felt the effects of the world, maybe more than we wanted to. On a dreadful day in 2007, I was with my family at my grandmother's house when we received news that my cousin's husband and one of my best friends, John Flores, had died in Iraq. I immediately fell to my knees in tears. At 16 years old, this was a formative moment for me. It made it viscerally real that things that happen thousands of miles away can affect us in the most impactful of ways. The lesson I learned is that Guam is far from being an isolated island. Rather, we should always expect global waves to crash onto our shores, smoothly or brutally. Many roads lead to Guam, and we are affected by these roads bringing global events to our doors. But many of us believe these roads are one way. We underestimate ourselves. And if we ourselves buy into the myth of our isolation, smallness, and unimportance, then we have internalized the most brutal global wave of all. Internalizing this makes us view the island, this beautiful island of Guam, as something that traps us, rather than viewing the island as a garden where we can watch our dreams grow. There is surely much work to be done to make the soil more fertile for our dreams, but surely we can agree it's not completely barren. The challenge, or rather the opportunity before us today, is to see the world and Guam differently. The opportunity is to see that these roads are not one way. Guam is not just the shore where global waves crash. Guam itself can create ripples in the global ocean. Our local can affect the global. We can make a difference. And we can do this today while we continue the quest for self-determination. We can reclaim our voice as we seek to decolonize. Even though we do not control our foreign affairs, this does not mean that Guam is powerless when it comes to engaging with the world. I believe that growing Guam's external engagement, regionally and internationally, is one of the most important steps we can take to both help the island today and prepare the island for its future. To do this, we can engage in paradiplomacy, which is essentially the foreign policy capacities of non-sovereign states and their participation in the international arena for their own interests. Subnational entities can thus be regarded less as a territory, but a space where global flows like capital, information, crisscross and solidify. Guam, under its status as an unincorporated territory, can be considered a subnational government unit which should take advantage of paradiplomacy. To borrow from one political theorist, subnational presence on the international stage is a fact of life in an interdependent world. That presence, known as paradiplomacy, can be a way forward. Let me be clear. Guam is not invisible internationally, even if we are often treated that way. Under the United Nations framework, Guam is, and I know people have varying opinions about the United Nations, but at least we know that under their framework, Guam is recognized as a non-self-governing territory. This classification isn't just symbolic, It's supposed to come with unique privileges and responsibilities for engaging with the world. For example, the UN Charter affirms that the territory of a colony or other NSGT has a status separate and distinct from the territory of the country administering it. We retain a separate legal status, a measure of legal personality here in Guam because of this, and we have the ability to be heard at the international level. This matters. Again, even though Guam does not control its own formal foreign affairs, paradiplomacy offers a path forward, a way for us to improve our standing and recognition in the international and regional communities while operating under the current constitutional and political limitations of territorial status. It is an opportunity for us to reclaim the voice of the we. Through paradiplomacy, we can strengthen regional partnerships, advocate for Guam's interests in multilateral forums, and build institutional knowledge. And we've already taken steps in that direction. We are already doing this today. As Dr. Corbin, a mentor of mine, notes in part 1 of Guam's self-determination study, Guam has engaged with many areas, especially the freely associated states, on issues like climate change, natural resource management, and foreign investment. We've sent representatives to testify before the UN Special Political and Decolonization Committee, the C4 as well as the C24. We also hold observer or associate membership in key international and regional bodies such as ESCAP and the Pacific Islands Forum. We're full members of organizations like the Pacific Community. And in a 2018 General Assembly resolution, the United Nations itself called on its agencies to strengthen support for the remaining NSGTs. This shows us that even though we are doing this today, and we should be proud of that, there is ample room for growth. Referring back to Dr. Corbin, he noted that for Guam, the extent of engagement in external affairs is judged at a level 2 out of 4, meaning that we have selected engagement but limited participation, particularly worldwide. And yet Guam's participation in these forums has been inconsistent. That's our problem. Meanwhile, other territories maintain regular presence and engage across sectors from trade to education to the environment. Overall, then, our participation regionally and internationally is limited. Or shall we say, it's limited for now. Because there is much more we can do even within existing U.S. policy and State Department delegation to the territories. Multilateral external engagement can help us solve common problems and provide technical assistance. Paradiplomacy isn't about rejection of the U.S. or anyone else. It's about Guam asserting itself within existing frameworks. External engagement can provide an avenue for us to actually exercise Guam's voice. It builds capacity. It opens relationships. It gives Guam a track record of global participation. It allows us to act on behalf of Guam's interests. As a U.S. territory, it is natural to think that the primary interests of the United States directly translate to also being in Guam's primary interests. There are instances in which this is true. What is best for the United States is also best for Guam. However, this should not be seen as an automatic process, because there are also times when what is good for the U.S. is not good for Guam. And we need to recognize that Guam has its own interests as well. Various factors play into this. How are we different? Well, we're thousands of miles away from the seat of power in D.C. We're much more rooted in the Asia-Pacific rather than other United States territories. We're a part of the Pacific Islands, particularly Micronesia. We're an unincorporated territory, unique geographic qualities, unique challenges, opportunities. All of this makes us us right now. But because of our territorial status, we don't control that foreign policy which sits in Washington. But what about everything else that crosses borders, like climate policy, trade, education, cultural exchange? These are global forces too, and they don't wait for sovereignty. In all of these domains, the world comes closer to us, and we are already reaching out. Collectively, this means that Guam must decide on what its key interests are and develop a strategy of engagement regionally and internationally. This would not be new or unique to Guam. Other territories do this. Greenland negotiates its own fishing and trade agreements. Puerto Rico has a de facto Secretary of State. So these examples show us you don't have to be sovereign to start acting like it. And to do this, we need to be deliberate and we need to be centralized. We cannot do this work scattered. We must take full advantage of the array of international and regional avenues of engagement available to us, not just for symbolic participation, but to enhance local governance, shape better policy, and advocate for ourselves on the global stage. This is where power of diplomacy becomes not just a concept, but a strategy. We need a disciplined, coherent, paradiplomatic approach backed by trained individuals and guided by Guam's own priorities, which could help raise awareness in the world of Guam's realities and demonstrate that we are more than a footnote in someone else's geopolitical script. To this end, I continue to advocate for the immediate establishment of an external engagement office within the government of Guam to centralize and coordinate all GovGuam engagement regionally and internationally, essentially acting as a repository for communiques and tracking outputs. This office should ensure that the institutional knowledge of our external engagement does not atrophy or wither between administration. This office will ensure that the people of Guam have a voice and that we speak with one voice than when we are out there in the world. This office wouldn't just send representatives to forums. It would identify priorities, brief our leaders, track communiques, and build Guam's presence one engagement at a time. We cannot build a presence in the world without a home base to anchor and support this work. Yet it must be emphasized that this exercise in power diplomacy does not serve as a proxy for our quest for decolonization. Power diplomacy can be a way to enhance decolonization efforts, not just an acceptance of the current territorial status. As scholars have described, power diplomacy can be viewed as the antechamber before the grand hall of diplomacy. We must continue to strive for an equitable political status that grants Guam a full measure of self-government. Even though external engagement is not us exercising foreign policy sovereignty, it is an opportunity to prepare for our political future. It is an opportunity to practice skills such as diplomacy and negotiation. And I proposed this scenario in one of my columns. So whenever I think about political status futures for Guam, my mind conjures this image. I picture a cold, bright conference room, kind of like this one, with representatives from Guam and the United States sitting around the table with stacks of papers. Because it's Guam, there's empanada, there's also coffee, some small talk before things turn serious. Proposals are presented, debates unfold, things may get heated. This is where the negotiations begin. And this image sticks with me because no matter what political status Guam chooses, independence, free association, or integration, negotiation will be pivotal. And to put it bluntly, if Guam doesn't negotiate strategically and sharply, we run the risk of walking away with the shorter end of the stick. And before any critic of decolonization uses that to defend the current status quo, we must remember that we already live on short ends of sharp sticks in this political arrangement with the United States. Here's the point. Any future political status requires a crop of smart, trained individuals, people well-versed in negotiation, diplomacy, advocacy, procedure. And this operates on two levels. First, we need people ready to negotiate with the U.S., to advocate for the kind of political future we actually want. Second, we need people who can negotiate in that future, whether we're independent, freely associated, or U.S. state. We will need sharp, capable representatives to fight for Guam's interests. Think about it. An independent Guam without competent diplomats is a Guam waiting to be stepped on. A Guam in free association will have to negotiate and renegotiate the terms of the relationship. If we mess this up, we can get stepped on. The compact isn't magic. It's paper. It's negotiation. A U.S. state of Guam will need negotiators in Congress, in rooms full of competing priorities who know how to fight for our island. So ask yourselves, do we have this now? If we were handed a new status tomorrow, are our negotiation knives sharpened, or are they dull and ineffective? As one Kenneth from New Caledonia mentioned, we don't want to leave France by the front door and then return begging at the window. These are hard questions, and the solutions aren't simple, but they are possible. We just need to invest in it. And that's why I also advocate for the funding of a negotiator paradiplomacy training program that will teach these precious skills that can be used for both now and for the future. Now, some folks might say this is a gamble. I can already hear it. Why are we spending money on this when we've got problems X, Y, and Z right now? There's no fixed date for decolonization when we'll transition to a new political status. Could be 2030, could be 2060, it could be later. To be quite honest, the chorus of decolonization critics is always loud, and they somehow always have top fan next to their names on Facebook. But anyways, here's what I believe. This is not a waste of resources. This is an investment, because the skills people gain in this kind of training, negotiation, diplomacy, public communication, political analysis, these skills are transferable. They will help shape leaders across sectors, even within our current colonial status. Even now, we really need to think of negotiation and diplomatic training as workforce development in the present. We must treat external engagement not as an afterthought, but as a frontline strategy for getting Guam's interests recognized and prioritized. We must build the infrastructure now. We must handle the issues of the present, of course, but not argue that every attempt to plan for the future detracts from the present. To do so would be to invite an unwarranted cycle of problems and cause the atrophy of better futures. The best time to train negotiators and diplomats for Guam was decades ago. And to use the cliche, the next best time is now. Our future depends on it, even if we don't realize it yet. Because compared to the price of inaction, starting a training program like this, damn, it's a bargain. Engaging in external affairs not only allows us to create a global ripple wave from Guam, but it can also help us internationalize and broaden our own thinking. It gives us access to other models of governance, health, education, development, diplomacy. Unsurprisingly, our view of the possible is largely shaped by what the US does. I'm not saying that that's bad necessarily, but too often we hear, that's not how it's done on the mainland. But here's the thing. This, Guam, we are the mainland of the Tomorrow people. The Marianas Archipelago is the mainland of the Tomorrow people. We need to take that seriously. And frankly, we shouldn't want to be the US mainland. When we look solely to the US for models, templates, and blueprints, although there are many great ones, if that's all we do, we are limiting our imaginations. Because the Pacific is full of wisdom. So is the Caribbean. So is the Arctic. So is the indigenous world. What if we continue to look to New Zealand for indigenous language revitalization strategies? Continue to look to other countries, other ways of living, other ways of life in the world. What could we do? What if Guam could be a place where global ideas from across the world intersect, that we adapt for our people and to serve our people? External engagement, then, is not just about visibility. It's about expanding our sense of what is possible. It invites us to unlearn the idea that there's only one right way to govern, only one right way to succeed, only one right path forward. So the question is not whether Guam can engage internationally, but whether we will do it strategically. Will we invest in the people, the structures, and the planning that allow Guam to stand with clarity, consistency, and courage before the world? Because the future doesn't begin with status change. The future begins with preparation. Our future depends on our ability to prepare for the future. We must remember that colonialism is not just an attack on our past. It is a consistent attack on our futures. Think about that.
Colonialism is not just an attack on our past. It is a process, a structure that continuously attacks our futures. So where does this leave us? We've talked about negotiation, about power diplomacy, about Guam's right and responsibility to engage with the world, even under the current colonial constraints. We've talked about preparation, not just for sovereignty, but for leadership, for presence, for voice. But I want to end not just with a policy point, but with a question. Who holds the higam? In my family, the Gofigans of Humata, some argue that our name comes from Gofigan, and higam is with the adze that you use to carve. Maybe we were skilled carvers. Maybe we knew how to wield the higam with precision and purpose. Maybe we shaped woods into canoes, carved paths across oceans, created vessels for new journeys. That image stays with me because in 2025, I don't just want to ask what Guam's political status future will be. I want to ask a more important question. Who will carve this future? And more than that, do our people still feel that we have the ability to carve that future? Or do we see the higam? Do we see the adze always in someone else's hands? If we want a future different from the present, if we want to be more than a footnote, more than a forward base, then we need to believe that we all hold the higam, even if the future is unclear, even if the path ahead is uncertain. Remember, uncertainty also means possibility. It means the future isn't written. It means there's still time to carve, to shape, to decide. We've got work to do. We need to build strategy, train negotiators, document history, engage the region. We need to stop waiting for someone to hand us sovereignty and start preparing to wield it. Because the future doesn't begin with status change. The future begins with preparation. And preparation begins with the belief that we have the right and the power to shape what comes next. We all hold the higam. Shall we start carving? Sijus Masi.
I told you it was going to be good. I did. Sijus Masi, Dr. Kenneth, Gofigan, Kuper. We're going to go ahead and move right into our next panel. This panel is called Lessons Learned from Territories Past and Present. The panel focuses on experiences from regional experts from territories past and present. And so in this panel, we asked panelists to discuss what they experienced in their respective process and what lessons they learned in their quest for decolonization. As a note, in 2019, we had a great conference with a pretty robust budget because we got some funding from Interior, which allowed us the ability to invite off-island guests, specifically from non-self-governing territories or territories that had decolonized. Unfortunately, we could not accommodate the travel costs of bringing guests in. So our next best alternative was to hold a hybrid virtual panel. But because of connectivity issues, we decided to pre-record the interviews and responses from panelists so that we don't have the thing freeze in the middle of the panel. So this will be a hybrid panel. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the panelists. I don't know why my picture... I think I'm up there because I'm supposed to be the facilitator. But I'm not really facilitating because we're showing the thing. Anyhow, let me just go ahead and introduce first Wilma R. Colazo. Wilma Reveron Colazo is a seasoned attorney and an advocate with decades of experience in civil litigation, constitutional law, and human rights, particularly in Puerto Rico. She currently serves as counsel at Weisboro, Mattis, and Copley LLC, focusing on litigation related to Hurricane Maria. From 1989 to 2020, she led her own legal practice and has served in key legal roles, including senior staff attorney at the ACLU and staff attorney at Puerto Rico Legal Services. Reverend Collazo has also taught constitutional history and law at institutions such as the University of Puerto Rico and Centro de Estudios Avanzados del Caribe. She has represented Puerto Rico's right to self-determination at the United Nations and held leadership roles in the Puerto Rico Bar Association. She holds advanced legal degrees from the University of Puerto Rico and the University of Salamanca and Universidad Complutense de Madrid. Her published work spans topics from civil disobedience in Vieques to decolonization in the Caribbean. Our next panelist, Larry Regetel, is a co-founder of WAGE, a nonprofit organization in Yap State, Federated States of Micronesia, that works with communities to promote cultural heritage of the Remetau people of the ocean, who are the indigenous people in the Central Caroline Islands. Regetel is Senap Master Canoe Carver and a poem navigator under the Mass School of Wiriang. Regetel received his undergraduate degree from the University of San Francisco and completed his graduate studies in international relations from Oxford University. He served as a diplomat for FSM for over a decade in his capacity as Deputy Assistant Secretary. Regetel is currently teaching Micronesian Seafaring System at the University of Guam Center for Island Wisdom. Our next panelist, Leonesia Tecla de Silva, is a peace-building expert with over 20 years of experience in conflict resolution, mediation, and promoting women's and youth empowerment in Timor-Leste. She serves as the National Consultant for Women, Peace, and Security with UN Women Timor-Leste and co-drafted the country's second UNSCR 1325 National Action Plan. Tecla helped establish Timor-Leste's first national network of mediators and played a key role in the 2006 crisis reintegration process. She has supported various UNDP programs focused on social cohesion and women's participation in peace building. As a consultant, she has worked with organizations such as Bridging Peoples, IRMA, CISPONS, DevTech Systems, UNWTO, and UNV. Her efforts have been internationally recognized, including at the 2022 Women's for Multilateralism event in Geneva. Lastly, our last panel guest is Benito Wheatley. Benito Wheatley is the special envoy of the Premier of the British Virgin Islands and the government's UN representative in Latin America and the Caribbean. He also serves as ambassador to CARICOM and the ACS and commissioner to the OECS. He is vice chair of the 40th session of UN ECLAC, vice chair of the 30th CDCC session, and chair of the ECLAC Associate Members Working Group. From 2014 to 2018, he was BVI's representative to the UK and EU director of the BVI office in London. He holds degrees from the London School of Economics and Morehouse College and is a policy fellow at the University of Cambridge. Wheatley frequently represents the BVI on global issues such as sustainable development and climate change. He is also a published author on small island developing states and the Caribbean. Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and the way we're going to run this is that we're going to play the panel. We interviewed each of the panelists. The time zones are tough, so we had to do these separately, but they were all given the same set of questions. Slight variations because some are representing territories yet to decolonize and some are representing territories that have. And so at the end of this, we are fortunate to have Mr. Larry Regetel here in-house with us. And he will join me on stage for a short Q&A after the panel. We did share the live link with our recorded guests, but we're not sure if they're able to patch in. If they are, then we'll put them up on the screen and have them participate in the Q&A. So thank you, everyone. Sorry about the long introduction, but let's go ahead and get started on the panel for today.